I have with me my friend Mandy Metz. She is a astrologer. She also does relationship coaching, among many other things. She's out of Medicine Hat, Alberta. And Mandy, I'll give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself before we get started today.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Emery, for inviting me to come on the show today. It's really a pleasure. Anytime I get asked to do something like this, I'm deeply honored. I'm from Medicine Hat. I've been here for about half my life. Grew up not too far away in a small town, Saskatchewan. I'm a farm girl, actually, but, shh, don't tell too many people that. I have been studying astrology for the better part of 10 years, and I'm also a metaphysician. So I practice taking a look at reality and making choices based off of a few basic truths. And I'm all about simplifying life, right? Astrology for me is about the natal chart, compatibility, which is where we get into some of the relationship stuff. And I also do medical astrology. So yeah, that's been a large part of my healing practice for me is astrology and getting to know who I am, and then helping other people get to know who they are as well.
So amazing. Thank you so much, Mandy. So last year during COVID, Mandy and I, living in the same community in Southern Alberta, connected for the first time. She was doing a little let's say maybe a giveaway for some people that were following her page. And I was so fortunate to have a chance to connect with her and to experience her amazing astrology services. So with that, we developed a little bit of a rapport, got to know each other a little bit. And I thought she would be so amazing to bring on here. She's just got so much amazing insights about relationship, love, boundaries. And in the line of work that I do, that is the biggest thing that seems to come up for people that they want to explore. So with that being said, Mandy, if there are a few kind of key components that you'd love to, I don't know, I guess, bring our attention to when it comes to love and relationships, please do.
So first of all, I just want to say, I didn't arrive at the things that I've arrived at because I was any good at it. That's for sure. I think we all have our come to Jesus moment where we're like, what just happened? And you realize that something's got to change. Something's got to give. I honestly think, so there's this like really cliche idea that you have to love yourself in order to love another. And that's true, but yet it's not. I think we're all worthy of love no matter where we're at, right? It's just sort of how deep do you know yourself, right? And how comfortable are you with that? It's getting to know all of you. It's the talents, it's the flaws, right? Like how honest can you be with who you are? I once did an audio recording where I talked about how I'm sometimes royally screwed. I'm a Leo, right? So royalty is kind of like our thing. And there are some aspects in my chart that make people scratch their head and they're like, okay. I no longer argue with those, right? So I found some peace at learning how to accept my patterns and what comes up for me and using those to make really great choices. Now, when I was young, I would do this thing where I would meet a guy and just be so like a smitten kitten, and you'd watch them and then you'd watch what they like, and then you try to become the thing that you know that they like. And what would happen was, a few years into the relationship, I would get so tired of trying to be that thing because I wasn't being me, right? And so then I would just scrap everything and leave the relationship and start all over. I quickly realized that I tend to overly give. Like I'm a self-sacrificer in relationships, right? I think a lot of people can actually relate to that.
Absolutely.
So for me, it starts in the beginning, and this is something that you can use in any relationship, right? So we're talking romantic relationship. We can talk about this, as far as like being a parent, friends, coworkers, right? Like those are people that you don't get to choose, right? Like they're kind of there. It's learning about what it is you want, what it is that you need, and then using your voice to speak up and ask for that. When you get really good at that right off the bat, you actually already are beginning to set boundaries, right? You're already communicating, and then you're inviting other people to share theirs with you as well, right? And so it helps them feel safe to do that.
That's amazing.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's where it starts. That's where it really starts. Now, of course, it's a little bit of a different story when we start to experience, things like conflict and whatnot. But that in itself is kind of almost a little bit of finesse, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to add something, Mandy.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few things that really struck a chord for myself, as far as things that are often explored during readings, whether they're readings I'm going to receive from someone else or whether they're readings that I'm doing for others. The idea that some of us, we have a tendency to give too much, that we fall into patterns of over giving, and there's a lot behind that. A lot of perhaps maybe modeled from our parents, what that might look like, how we might maybe think we're supposed to behave in a relationship, a desire to be needed, to not be rejected. And so we tend to have a tendency to hold back a lot of who we are. So we have challenges around intimacy, and that's the sacral chakra energy, And so when we're truly not willing to show people who we really, really are, it's not a huge surprise that somehow we don't end up feeling loved. We don't end up feeling satisfied. And I listen to you say, after a couple years, you get tired. I'm like, a couple years, man, that's a big dedication of fatigue. One thing that I see a lot of in my clients who fall into overgiving tendencies is it'll always be the left shoulder, the left arm that will either draw my attention, or it is literally drawing their attention through illness or discomfort, something like that. And it's that feminine energy, it's like it just shows that we're giving where we should be receiving. And at the end of the day, when we are putting all of our energy into giving and then we go into over giving, we already have so little opportunity to be able to live in a way that's energetically balanced. Then if we have challenges in receiving, it's even more so. So it's kind of like the wheel of karma. It's the idea that what you put out comes back to you. But if we're over giving, we're already, kind of bringing huge challenge to that. And then if we have a challenge receiving, it's that way as well. So
yeah, we end up shutting off that flow of energy or that connection to the people around us, right? One of the things that I like to walk people through is, like, sit there and think about your past relationships. Like, normally we don't do a whole lot of talking about that because that is in the past, but those relationships existed, they happened, right? And from there, you can begin to identify, where this was propping up for you, right? So it was the moment where you realized that things were maybe not quite the way you thought they were going to be. And then I encourage people to sit and ask, in that moment, you were frustrated, you were resentful, you were feeling disconnected. What was missing for you? Because that's what's important. Identify what it is that you want, right? And so you can do that by reflecting on your past relationships. Now, you can even take it one step further. And have you ever heard the expression, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with?
absolutely. Yeah. It's with me huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, it is so true. So I thought about my 5 people that I spend the most time with, and I was like, man, what do they bring to the table? And I thought about just stuff that I noticed about them, right? And I was like, well, clearly that's important to me too, right? And so I spend a lot of time making sure that I'm touching on what it is that I'm grateful for from them. But it allows me to take that step back and realize how it is that they're giving,
Yeah.
right? And so then I get the opportunity to receive as well. So yeah, you can practice this at any time, anywhere, with anyone. It's really cool. It's something about the 5 love languages. If anybody has ever heard anything about that, it's really kind of helpful.
I speak about that book a lot with clients. It's so helpful to understand what it is that we want and value, and what it is that other people want and value, because sometimes it's literally like we're missing the boat. It's like, I love you, you love me, but neither of us feel loved. There's a reason, right? And so learning how we both thrive and what we each offer is so important. I often suggest to clients, that they look at uh, relationships, whether they were wonderful, whether they offered a lot of what they wanted, or whether it taught them what they didn't want, to always take that piece that fit what you didn't want and translate it. It's like, okay, yep, you don't want that again, but what did you learn that you wanted, right? So turn it into a positive, into a highlight. And I like what you said. I think about some of the 5 people closest, but I never equated those relationships and those values and what they offered as being, things that we could then take and inspire us to think about again what we would like in a love relationship, in a romantic relationship. That's really important.
Yeah, you know what? I've even had opportunities where, I'll be getting to know a guy, and I'll say, like these are the things that make me happy. This is what I want. And on occasion, you find somebody who's a little bit insecure, and they're like, "Well, that's not possible." It's like, well, actually, I have that in spades in my life. I don't know what you're talking about, but peace.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to call it like you see it. Hey, you learn early and you bow out when you recognize that it's not going to be a match, when there's something, either whether it be a red flag or just something that's really of value to you, and it becomes apparent really early on. Just to be able to recognize it, kind of chalk up your losses, take the learning and move on, right? We too often stay in things hoping that they improve, or giving them time. Some things I think are, addressable. Some things are not. Some things are just, no, bow out now.
Absolutely. Well, and everybody kind of gets to decide what that looks like for them, right? So, I have some friends who are in relationships, and I'll hear some things and I'll be like, all right, you can handle that. That's great. That's great. It wouldn't be me. Like I admit, I fully own that I am a tall order and I will call it quick, right? But fire sign, that's what we do. But again, the principles are usually always the same, right? And everybody gets to decide what that looks like for them. So again, it's I guess it's about what you're comfortable with, and again, what you want. So the neat thing about saying what it is that you want, right? So speaking your expectations is that, when you come up against a challenge in any relationship, you're talking about what it is that you want, and you're making it less about what it is they're doing wrong. Because people don't like when you point out what it is that they're doing wrong. If you own what it is that you want and just kind of stand in that space, it gives them an opportunity to step into that and meet you there, right?
It's like effective communication 101, right? The first thing you learn, the I statement. What you can express from that point of view. Yes, it has a tendency to spark a lot less of that defensiveness.
Yeah, once you get to a place where somebody is defensive, the conversation becomes something totally different. Even my job, I'm an inventory representative, and so my job is to audit inventory and find discrepancies, and then to have conversations with the staff. That's a delicate balance. It's a dance, really. And so if I approach every situation with hey, this is what we need to do in order to make this work or make this happen, we take the onus off of them. People are not inherently bad. People are inherently good.
Agreed.
Right? If we can get to that place where we recognize that, we stop blaming somebody, we stop coming at them, we stop attacking them, and we assume that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed. Now, you said something earlier that I love. You talked about when you speak what it is that you want, you're already setting boundaries. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I think quite often when we first get into relationships, I chalk this up to movies and music, right? There's this romantic idea that you're going to be able to just look at the person and be like, right? Like, read my mind. And then we create this story in our head of how this relationship is going to go. And we don't realize that the other person is actually not privy to that fantasy or that story. Mm-hmm. And so when they don't live up to it, then we become really upset. It's actually kind of toxic to not communicate what your relationship expectations are.
Completely agree.
Yeah. You have to be willing to say, you have to be willing to talk about it. If you're not willing to do that, then either this isn't the person for you, or, maybe you just need to spend a little bit more time figuring out how to communicate that, right? So, my style is very direct, clearly. Other people are a little bit more subtle, right? Maybe I've suggested to people like, well, maybe try reading this article, or maybe try watching this movie, and then have a conversation about it afterwards. See what happens, right? Different personalities respond to different mediums, right? But yeah, so when you're talking about what it is that you want, you're already setting those boundaries. So by saying what it is that you want in comparison, you're already stating what it is that you don't want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right? Yes.
And make it clear.
Yes. And it's amazing to me that, so many people, they're afraid to speak that. They're afraid to have those conversations, even in the world of online dating. To me, what a perfect forum, in a sense. It's the only time I'll use the word perfect forum. To be able to ask a stranger a question, to put out what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you want. And not that everybody's always truthful, but if somebody says, are you somebody who is looking to have a family? And the other person says, no, I'm already done. And the first person, it's part of their life path. They choose to have a family. They want to, have 3 children in the next 5 years, or whatever it is that their desire is. You know when to chalk up your losses and walk away, right? And if you're not having those initial conversations, who knows how much time a person ends up investing in something that's just not going to add up to what they want. So to me, the anonymity in something like online dating is, it has its drawbacks, absolutely. But that's one bonus, I think. And it just still surprises me how many people don't go there.
You know what? That's actually a really great point, because we get caught up in this, again, this romantic idea of love. And so we're willing to forgo the compatibility side of things, right? So yeah, I suppose online dating would give you an opportunity to hash that out pretty quick. Yes, you're right. I think online dating also has its setbacks. I know for me, I found that it was a bit like I was being passed around too much. Like I was convenient, and so for me, that was a thing where I was like, I don't enjoy being treated that way. But yeah, the conversation could be very quick, very to the point, and yeah, that's definitely valuable. I think that that's something that tends to get dragged on through, months of the initial get together otherwise, right? Or, you'll spend some time together and, little things kind of creep up like, oh, I want to get married, but maybe the other person doesn't want to, but you think, oh, they're going to change. I can change them. Love changes everything. Yeah, and it does. Probably not like that.
Yeah, it doesn't quite change it in all the ways we think it's going to. It's not that magical, right? Love is one factor, and yet it's not the whole thing. You can love and know it's toxic. You can be compatible and not have love, and so really one thing that I guide clients in is really focusing on how you want to feel, rather than even all of the ins and outs. The ins and outs of, lifestyle and compatibility, personality, and all those kinds of things are really important. But if you knew none of that, if all you focused on was the emotion you wanted to experience within a relationship, within a partnership, it stands to reason that everything else would somehow line up. That's how I look at it. Because again, the emotion being the most important thing, you could get everything you wanted and not be happy, not be content, not feel loved, valued, respected. It gets us nowhere.
Absolutely. Well, and allowing, the flux of the emotion, right? As you're going through these things, man, I love reminding people that, you wouldn't recognize the highs without the lows, right? You would
Mm-hmm.
know the positive without the negative. Learning to accept it for what it is, but then learning to assess every moment for what it is. And is this taking me to where it is that I want to go, or how it is that I want to feel? Right?
Absolutely.
To me, the person that you're with should inspire you, right? You should like who you are just a little more when you're around them.
Absolutely agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Mandy, can you take these last couple of minutes and, if you will, perhaps throw out a couple of maybe key pairings among astrology, um, placements that might be uh, perhaps good matches for some of our listeners?
Sure. So, I mean, if we're going to talk just straight sun signs, so all we mean when we say sun sign is your sun was in this particular zodiac or constellation at the time that you were born. We want to stick with the same elements, right? So, if we're talking Earth, we've got our Virgos, our Taurus, and our Capricorn. Those are personalities that tend to work together really, really well. Fire elements are the Aries, the Leos, and the Sagittarius. And the water elements are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And then, of course, the last ones are air, which are Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. And now some of those elements also do work really well together, but some of them not quite so much. So fire, for instance, needs the other elements in order to exist. Well, except for too much water, that kind of burns us out. But air can exist with any other element, really. But then when we have a look at a compatibility chart, we also have a look at, say, moon sign compatibility, right? So you want to make sure that your moons are somewhat similar, right? So somebody who has their moon in a fire sign is actually a lot more reactive emotionally versus somebody who has their moon in a water sign where it's a little bit more comfortable, tends to be more fluid. Somebody who has their moon sign in an air sign is more intellectual. They want to talk about it. They want to think about it. They're not necessarily feelers per se. They want to think about it first. Those who have their moon in an earth sign are more practical. They're going to consider the practical stuff before they go ahead with anything else. They want things to be stable. They want to be sure before they move forward. And then moving past that, I mean, there's a few other aspects that you would take a look at, such as, say Venus or Mars. So Venus would be, beauty. Mars would be the way that we express our physical emotion. So having a look at aspects or how well two parties charts play out together with those would be really, really important as well. But I always say to everybody too, like even when it comes to a compatibility, your personal dedication comes first, right? So compatibility will never really dictate how long two people are going to be together. It has to be a willingness to make it work.
Excellent point. So essentially, we can use them as kind of just an idea, something that might offer us a little bit of guidance. However, making sure that we absolutely go based on compatibility, our own experience, always to highlight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mandy, it's been absolutely wonderful having you here chatting with me. It's always a pleasure to see you. And I hope that we may connect again soon. So Mandy, you can find on Facebook, on her page, Mindset Master Podcast and Coaching, if you care to connect with her for anything. And again, you can find me on Emery Christie, Psychic Medium on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure, Mandy. Thank you.